Thank you for your introduction, Reverend Okano. I am Okochi, a priest of the Jodo school. I appreciate this valuable opportunity to give a talk. The theme I was given was terminal care and the super aging society. It's a very vast topic. Today, I'd like to talk about the Japan of the future. In the next 20 to 40 years, Japan is expected to go through drastic changes in society that many people will be facing a very difficult situation. I'd like to think about the design for the future. As one example for that, I'd like to explain about the practices that I'm involved in, though I'm just getting started. As I explained, there are many hardships for people in society, and in the future, we can expect many difficulties will be intensifying in the coming days. Furthermore, Japanese temples and priests are in a difficult situation now and face many challenges. Our future is not necessarily so bright. Often the future of the temples is said to be in crisis. I also feel the difficulty of the future as a priest of a Japanese temple. When we look at these difficulties in combination, we realize it is also an opportunity for innovation or an opportunity to have a compassionate interaction with people and having a new type of Buddhist practice in society. And this is a source of hope. Let's think about the age that we are living in and are going to live in. Of course, it's like this is like bringing coals to Newcastle, but please bear with me. From 2020 into the future, let's think about the 20 years in the future. In Japan, there's a system called the Jidan or Danka system that connects the Buddhist temples to their members who have their tombs at the temple. This relationship is now under a lot of strain. It has been under strain from several decades ago, and it's becoming more severe now. Actually, there are many people who no longer feel the need to be a member of a temple, so they close down their grave, and they also close down the Buddhist altar in their house. Many former temple members are canceling their membership. And one important aspect of Japanese Buddhism, or ceremony, is becoming simplified more and more recently. The temple buildings, such as the prayer halls of many Japanese temples, are getting old and decrepit. The believers who used to donate for repair or rebuilding of the temples are no longer involved. So there are not enough funding sources to rebuild or repair the temples. That's a challenge. The temples face these kind of challenges, but now the society at large is having a very severe changes. The annual rate of population is increasing a lot. About 1.5 million people are going to die every year by 2025, and the population is declining 700,000 people every year. Young people are worried about the future. And the elderly people the people who are at working now will no longer be able to work, and they'll need to be supported from 2020 to 2050. The burden of supporting the elderly population is going to increase. In the 2040s, 40% of the population is expected to be living alone, and 1 out of 4 elderly person will have dementia. And by that time, there will be 1.7 million deaths every year. As the population declines, we'll enter into a situation of a super aging society, and maintaining society and it becomes a big challenge. There will be fewer young people, but we will need to supplement the labor force. Also by accepting more foreign workers into Japan. It is expected that there will be more migrant workers contributing to the Japanese economy in the future. It sounds like a rather negative story so far. Our livelihoods and social welfare and our sense of the value of life and death may change. These issues are coming to a head now, and various social systems may have to change in the future. Japan up to now has not had so much diversity, but in the future we'll be having more migrant workers living in Japan, and the rights of minorities will be given more importance in the future. Hopefully this will lead to a more diverse and society that respects people's differences. We'll also have to rethink what it means to work and what it means to live. And we may enter into a new search for our roots that might lead to a reawakening of a sense of the importance of religion and spirituality. Maybe this is just my wishful thinking, but this is what I feel. So temples and priests and the teaching of Buddhism may become important in a new way, even as the Danka system of temple membership goes into decline. Next, I'd like to share specifically about the activities I'm doing. How do we engage as priests in the people in the community? How do we provide people who need help people who need medical care or spiritual care? The people in the community may not be temple members, but they live near our temple. Some of them I might have casual exchanges with on the street. Other people I may have never met before. How can these different types of people connect with the temple? Unfortunately, if our temple was open at all times, then people in need could come into the temple at any time. But my temple and most temples are not organized like that. So I've been thinking how we can connect better to the people in the community. That's why this summer we opened a station for daycare for elderly people at my temple. We made use of an open store just 2 or 3 minutes from my temple and made that into a daycare center for elderly people. And we gave it the name the Satsanga Gansho-ji. Satsanga means, you know, a sangha of joining together. In October, we also started the Satsanga Oten-in, a satellite daycare center for elderly people was established in Oten Temple in the middle of Osaka, providing daycare services for elderly people. I'm working as a chaplain there, visiting the elderly people and ill people, working together with the nursing care professionals. In other words, Up to now, I only mainly engaged with our church members, but now I go to visit elderly people in the community, establishing a new relationship between my temple and people in the community. I hope that will also lead to further connections among the community members as well. Here's our staff. The gentleman next to me also is bald, but he's not a monk. He is Dr. Watanabe. Normally, these nurses go to the homes of the elderly people, and they place orders for me to go as a chaplain if needed. And I will go and talk to the patients at their homes. This is Satsanga Gansho-ji. We also have a spiritual care home clinical center, which sends chaplains to those in need. From now on, our chaplains will be sent out from the center into the community. You may wonder why we decided to make this center for dispatch of care workers to elderly people. We feel Buddhism teaches to value the life of all living beings. We wanted to implement this Buddhist philosophy in our community. Here is another more personal aspect to it. 3 years from now, our temple will have its 450th anniversary of establishment. And I, as the abbot of this temple now, want to carry on our philosophy of chanting the name of Amitabha for the next 50 years. In the next 50 years, until the 500th anniversary of my temple, I would like to continue to engage in society and pass the torch to the next generation. I want to communicate things of value to the future. I also want to make the necessary changes and adopt new things to, take a new approach to Buddhism in society. Japan is more than a decade behind, but advanced care planning is at last getting attention in Japan now, though it's been established overseas for a long time. The idea is that one should think about what kind of medical care and nursing care one wants to get in old age while you're still healthy. The family members and the clerics can also contribute and help the person to make choices that are life nurturing. That is the concept of advanced care planning, which our health ministry also is now promoting. And there's a new attention on this approach in Japan as well. When we think about our history with temple members, we know those temple members from the time they were small, or we know their parents or grandparents. So we have a long connection with these temple members. We can work together with the caregivers. If the person is suffering from dementia, or has a chronic disease, or is facing imminent death, we can have an idea about their sense of value. We can advocate for the patient and support the patient, especially in their final days. That is one of the important roles that we as clerics, as priests, can play. When I think about it this way, in the future in Japan, there will be an increase in the people who will die at home rather than in the hospital. There is a symbolic word that people say they would prefer to die on their own tatami mat at home. But many people do not have many options. As the death rate increases, there may be people who have to die at their home, not having the option to die in the hospital. And that would be a very severe difficulty for them. People who have gotten elderly are in their 90s or 100s. Their family members also will be aging by that time. We in the community need to think not only about the people about to die, but also the people who are taking care of them. There's also the concept of double care now. The younger people are busy caring for their own children as well as caring for their parents or their parents-in-law. That can be a great burden, and this is an increasingly severe issue in Japan. Another key word nowadays in Japan is that everybody can expect to live 100 years. When we think, it's important to think how to achieve death with dignity, and also how to deal with advanced medicine and regenerative medicine in that context. With these thoughts in mind, I'd like to talk about the future role of temples. I think there are four main roles that the Buddhist temple will need to play. First, the temple and the temple members have a clear relationship. We will first work with our temple members, but we will also be a more public space where we engage with many people in society. Secondly, we will be concerned as working with those who are about to die in collaboration with people in multiple generations. And there we will value spirituality. And we need to work among multiple generations. So one activity for this is our dispatch of chaplains to help the aging people or sick people. That will be a strong message of the public role of the priests. We'll be engaging not only with our temple members or other priests, but with the caregivers, the healthcare professionals, and many people in the society. And people in society will get the message that the temple is open to them and is engaging with everybody. Secondly, I mentioned that there are many people who might have to die at home inevitably, not necessarily at their choice. Elderly people who come back to their home, who are getting hospice care at home, need to feel safe as they face that situation at their homes. They need various types of resources for that. Temples can serve as a hub to provide the resources required by elderly people in the community. Thirdly, I mentioned that many people have closed down their graves and their altars, and there's a disconnect between generations. And fewer families are living with their elderly generation. We need to we can perhaps cooperate in reestablishing the connections between generations. The temple can play a central role to create a culture where everybody is supportive with people as they are dealing with death. Finally, we need to give spiritual care. We priests can develop skills as professionals in spiritual care and grief care. for instance, as chaplains or interreligious chaplains, though I don't have time to talk about it today. Well, that was one of the reasons we established our, our home care service at our temple. We also need to think about connecting with the younger generation, especially children. Some temples are opening a space for giving lunches to children. We also can have internships with local schools and high schools. We also have ideas about giving education about the Buddhist view on life and death for local community members. I'll have to skip the details on that due to lack of time. This will be my final slide. With the temple as a focal point, we will engage not only with our temple members, but we will engage with students in the community. We'll also engage with the local government providing various services. And we will relate with healthcare professionals and welfare professionals and connect with community members and establish a new type of relationship with them. We can prepare for disasters, or we can share Buddhist view on preparing for death. In that way, more and more people will be coming to the temple and feel a connection with the temple. As we establish that kind of sense of trust, we will learn to help each other, and we'll have a mutual health functionality. By strengthening this functionality, we can strengthen the resiliency of local communities, so that people who are dying helplessly in their own home will no longer have to feel helpless, and they can feel safe to spend their final days at home knowing they are supported by their community. We want to create that kind of a society where everybody helps everybody. That's why we established our daycare station as a first step towards that. We hope that priests can be an important player in this effort. And my example is just one very small example of a much larger effort to do this. Thank you for your attention.